So in order to solve time computation, there are certain rules we must understand. And the first rule we are going to understand here is that the year 0, which is this year here, like I have told us when I draw this table, that all this represents a century starting from here to here. So the year 0 here represents a year. That means from here to here is 1 year. This one here stand in, for example, let's say we have 20 here, and then you bring this one here, you add it, you get the year 2000. So the year 0 has a value of 1. Then rule number 2, when you are given time to compute, and BC or AD is not stated, you are expected to solve for BC and also solve for AD. Then another rule again is that if you are given a century to compute, if it's in statement, you are expected to minus 1. What do I mean? For example, you are given a question whereby you are told that the final year students or the first year students of class of 024 got admission on so day in the 21st century. In what century were they admitted? So from the word 21st, you hear of 21st century now. What we are saying here is that this 21st, now you say 21 minus 1 is going to give you 20. And that 20, you add up the remaining 4, you have 2024. That's why you see that every year that begins with 20 is being known as 21st century, because you are expected to minus 1. Then another rule again is when you are given a figure to compute, let's say for example you are given this 2024 and you are expected to convert it into a statement. So for you to be able to get this 21st century from this 2024, you are expected to add 1 to the century. So you have 20 plus 1 equals to 21, which is 21st century. So these are the rules you must take note of when calculating time computation. So now we'll go back and look at some of our questions and try answering them. So in order for us to be able to understand how to solve time computation, we shall be looking at this particular question. The question says, study the following event in history and answer the questions that follows. Study the following event in history and answer the questions that follows. A. Julius Caesar was stabbed death in 44 BC. B. In AD 198, the brazier was painted by Melifes Jacobs. In AD 1941, the astronomer Celsius reduced the centigrade scale. In AD 1953, Siamese. So when given time to compute, you first of all draw a table like this, starting from 00 to 99. Then after that, you draw a line going up, starting from 00. You draw a line going up. As you can see, I put an arrow at the top of the line indicating AD. This line means that AD is counted upward. Then I also drew another line here, downward, with the arrow facing downward. Then I came down here, I wrote BC. This is to tell you that BC is counted downward. Then from 00 here to 99 is 100 years, and 100 years form a century. Then if you divide this into 2, you have 50 and 50. So let's divide it. 1, 2, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you divide it into 2. That means to divide 10 into 2, it means you are going to count it 5, 5. So we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is where I have my 5. Then I draw a straight line to separate the 2. Good. Then when you count the up one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then the down one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is half. This is half of a century. So I indicate half. I indicate half here. Then I am to break this half again into quarter. Then in breaking this half into quarter now, I will count 25, 25. That's half of 50. That's half of half. That's what we call quarter. So let's count. We have 10 to 50 here. So we count 10, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. So we put a mark here. Then when we put a mark here, we drag it. We drag it out. So you'll find out that from here to here is 25. Right, let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. Then let's count the up one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. So you see we now have 25, 25, and this is what we call quarter. So now we have quarter here and we have another quarter here. So we are going to repeat the same thing in the upper part of the half. So we check, this is 10, 15, 16, 17, 18, 10, 20, sorry, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. We have our 25 here, cutting between 75 and 74. Then we drag it again. And then we drag the other one to the end too. So this is 25, this is 25, this is 25, and this is 25. So now we have first quarter here, second quarter here, third quarter here, and fourth quarter. All right, so for BC, since here is our BC, we are counting from up. So this is Q1, our first quarter, Q2, our second quarter, Q3, our third quarter, Q4, our fourth quarter. Meanwhile, in the other side of the table, here is our first quarter. Since we are counting from down, this is our second quarter, this is our third quarter, and this is our fourth quarter here. So this is first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and fourth quarter BC, AD. And this is first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and fourth quarter BC. So BC is counted downward, AD is counted upward. So while this one is first quarter BC, it is what? Fourth quarter AD. While this one is second quarter BC, at the same time it is third quarter AD. While this one is second quarter AD, it is third quarter BC. While this one is fourth quarter BC, it is 1 quarter AD. So once you understand this table, it will guide you on how you will go ahead with your calculation. We are going to stop here for this video. So for us to be able to solve this our issue, we are going to be making use of this table. We are going to be making use of this table. But meanwhile, you go ahead and then draw another table. You will go back to your book and then you draw a table. You draw a table and your table will have a space, just something like this. You draw a table, and in this table we have events, we have century. Your question will determine the type of table you are going to draw. But our question, the first question we have been asked, they asked us to calculate century and decade. So that's why I have event, century, and then I have my decade. Then after that, you spell out, ensure that your table, you're going to draw your table and then spell out all the questions being asked in the table. The first question we were asked was talking about event A and B. So I'm going to write down A and B. After that, I'll go to the second question and then state what the second one is asking. Then from there, I'll go to the third one. So question number 1, event number A, and then so I'm going to state out every single thing that is there. Event number 3 was talking about Julius Caesar stabbed death in 44 BC. So that was the first question. And then my second question talked about brazier patent by Mary Felstoke. Mary Felstokes, or Fels Jacob, sorry. Mary Fels Jacob in AD 198. And then that is it for event 1. That is it for event 1. Then event 2, we're asked to calculate century and quarter. So I'll write century, quarter. I'll write century and quarter. And then I'll spell out my event, which is C. So this is the question we have. This is the question we have. I have brought out our questions. These are all the questions we have as stated down here. So now we are going to solve them one after the other, making use of our table now. So the first question says Julius Caesar stabbed death in 44 BC. So since it's talking about Julius Caesar being stabbed death in 44 BC, we will go to our table and look for where 44 appeared. 44 is here. So I cycle 44. And then the question says the century and the decade. So since the question is talking about century and decade, what am I going to do? So the other one we are talking about 1941, right? Since we already have one under millennium, so we have the 19 plus 1, which is equal to was 20. So this is 20th century. Shows us that this event happened in what? 20th century. Then we come down here and then we indicate our 20th century here. So 20th century. And then now we are talking about the quarter. What quarter did this event happen? You come down to your table again. You look for 41. 41 is here. And then you find out that it happened in what? This first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter AD. First quarter. All right, the question is talking about century and decade, and I've already spelled out that this thing happened in 44 BC. 44 BC. I hope we know that in mathematics that 44 BC or 44 can also be written as 044 and can also be written as 0044. All these things mean the same thing. So now I want to take us back to primary school where we did 1,000, 100, tens and unit. We can still remember it, 1,000, 100, tens, unit. So in your 1,000, 100, tens and unit, let's say we have 0044. Hope we know that this 0 here has a value of 1,000, this 0 here has a value of 100, this 10 here has a value of 4, and this unit has a value of 4. This 10 has a value of 40, tens have a value of 40, of tens, tens means from 10 and above. So we'll be talking about this 10 being 4 times 10, which is 40, while this 4 is still 4. That's what I mean. So now in time computation, we substitute this 1,000 to millennium. we substitute this 100 to century, we substitute this tens to decade, while the unit as year. So instead of writing tens, hundred, thousand, hundred, tens, unit, we write millennium, century, decade, and year. Also, I want us to know one thing, that in time computation, let me explain this millennium. I know I did not explain it. Let me explain it now. We have millennium, we have century, we have decade, and then we have year. When we talk about millennium, the millennium is referring to a period of 1,000 years. A century is referring to a period of 100 years, while a decade is referring to a period of 10 years, and then a year is referring to 12 months, 365 days, and so on. Meanwhile, there is another period of time which, though we might be using it, but it's not all the every time, but sometimes you may see a question, generation. Though you might not see any question that has to do with generation, but let me just add it up. So generation is a period of 40 years. That is why you will hear the adage where they say that he who is a fool at 40 is a fool forever. It shows that the person have overstayed his generation. So at 40 years, you are expected to have procreated. That means you must have given birth to someone who is going to start up another new generation. So a period of 40 years is assumed to be a generation. So if you have lived up to 40 years, you have lived off your life on earth. So 40 years is generation. Anybody that dies after 40 years have lived long. So back to our time computation now. We have 0044. And the rule I gave you people, the rule I gave us, the rule says that if you are given a century to compute, and if you are given a century to compute, if it is in figure, you are expected to add 1. So this is a figure. 0, 0, 0, this 44 BC is a figure, and then we're expected to add 1. Where are we adding the 1? In the century, which is here. So now, and what we have here is not 0. What we have here is 0. So this 0 now, I will now say 0 plus 1, which is equals to what? 1. And this 1 is what? First. So definitely with this now, I have answered my question regarding the century, because I came here, I have to add plus 1. So, and this one become 1. So I now have answered my question regarding the century. So since we have first, so automatically it shows that Julius Caesar died in 1st century BC. 1st century BC. Then they are asking us which decade. So how do we find a decade? We come back to our table, we count. This is our first decade, this is our second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10 for AD. And this is our first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10 for BC. And we know that the year we are talking about is BC, so we are going to count from up downward. So in counting from up downward, we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it shows that Julius Caesar died in what? 1st century BC, and then 6th decade. It shows that he died in what? The 6th decade of the 1st century. So you have answered the first question. Then let's go down to the second question. The second question said Brazil patent by Mary Fels Jacob was in AD 198. Though I think there is a mistake in the question, but we are going to work with it since that's the question we have. We are talking about 198. The mistake, I think this thing should be 1980 something or 1958. I think there's an error, but let's just work with the year we have here so we will not get confused. Then now we have 198. We have 198, 198, maintaining the same what we have here, which is what? We have our millennium, we have our century, we have our decade, and we have our year. Then we have 0 here, we have 8 here, we have 9 here, we have 1. So we have 0 here in the millennium. So now the same process, we have 1 here. So we'll say 1. We have 1 under century, and you know we are adding 1 to the century. So we'll say 1 plus 1 equals to what? 2. One plus 1 equal to 2. So now, when did this thing happen? Since it's 2 now, so it means second century. It means second century. Then we'll come back to our table. We have gotten that this event happened in what? Second century. Then it's now for us to look for the decade. What decade? So what we have at the end here is 98. So we'll look for 98. Our 98 is here. And mind you that this time around we are talking about what? AD. So since it's AD, it means that we'll start counting from down upward. So in counting from down upward, now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So automatically it falls in what? 10th decade. So it shows that this event happened in what? Second century of the 2nd century AD. It happens in what? 10th decade of the 2nd century AD. You have answered your first question. So let's check the second question. The second question says, and Celsius introduces the centigrade scale in AD 1941. So let's go back to our table and then get it again. So we have 1941. Look here, 1941. This is what I'm making use of. We still have our millennium, century, decade, and our year. So now, this is what we are working with. This is our century. And that's where we do the addition and the minus. So, since we already have 1 under millennium, okay, let's do it. So we keep counting. You find this is first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter AD, first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter BC. So, and our question said that the event took place in what? Took place in 1941. Then our 41 is here. And when you check it, and it's AD 1941, so it is first quarter, second quarter. So it happened in what? Second quarter AD. Second quarter AD. Then we are done with the first question, and from it we have found out that the answer there is what? Second quarter of the 20th century AD. Then the D, which I put 20th century here. Let's see how we got the 20th century. The same process. You know that they say that it happened in AD 1953. So AD 1953. This one now, we'll say 19 plus 1, which will give us was 20th century. So 20th now. That's how we got this 20th century that I wrote down here. Then the other part of it, which is what? The 53, is from there we are going to get the quarter. We come here, look for 53. This is 53. Then we count first quarter, second quarter, third quarter. So it happened in what? Third quarter of the 20th century. That's when the first successful separation of Siamese twins took place. Then after that, the next question, they said AD 1951, the kidney transplant by Dr. Lola was successful. Then the kidney transplant, they said the same process, 19 plus 1, it will give us what? 20th century. So since it has given us 20th century, we come here, we write 20th century AD. 20th century AD. Then it happens in 1951. So we come down here, look for 51. Our 51 is here. And then the question, they say, in what half? In what half? So the half now, if you look at it, this is first half. First half ends here. First half AD, second half AD, first half BC, second half BC. So since it's AD and it falls in here, so automatically it falls into what? Second half. Then the next question, the same as Mandela became president in 1994. The same process as we did before. 19 plus 1, you have 20th. Then we come here, we write 20th century AD. 20th century AD. Then we now talk about the half. Automatically you know that it falls in 1994 is here, and definitely falls into what? Second half. So we have our second half here. With this now, we are done answering the questions on time computation. If you have any personal questions aside from this, you can send me a review question in on my comment section, or can call me through my numbers that are there. I will direct you on how to get the questions across to me. Thank you, and thanks for watching.